Today's video is about my experience of being Black in Colombia and also the clear need for inclusion and diversity in Colombian media. If you don't know, my name is Zoe. I'm from the US, but I currently live in Colombia. I like to share series, movies, music, books, podcasts for you to be able to practice your Spanish at an advanced level. I do like to highlight Afro-Latinos whenever I can. Usually it ends up being Afro-Colombians because I'm in Colombia. But yeah, that's enough about me. Let's get into today's topic. Before we get into today's discussion, I do want to go over some vocab. So in Colombia, Afro-descendants can identify 4 different ways. So it's Afro-Colombiano, Negro, Palenquero, and Raizal. This depends on the person. They choose whichever word represents them the best. In today's video, I'm just going to be using Afro-Colombian just to make life easier, but there are 4 different ways that you can identify. And to go along with this, just to open us up into this discussion, I did want to share a story. So I studied Spanish at a Colombian university, and I was invited to a class where an Afro-Colombian student was going to be sharing about his culture. So pretty much what he had us do was perform a ritual. It's pretty much a funeral for a child that dies before the age of 7. So it's connected to slavery because at that time when it would happen, the parents would be happy that their child died because they didn't have to go through that life. So still to this day, when someone dies at a young age, is more of a celebration, is more of a happy event instead of like the sadness of a funeral. So he had us go through that. And then after that, he answered questions. Mind you, this is a class at a Colombian university full of Colombian students. I was the only foreigner in the room. He mentioned these 4 terms, and none of the students knew what he was talking about. They're like, oh, there's 4 different terms. I had already heard the terms because I read, and whenever I can, I read about Afro-Colombian history. He went on to express other things, and I could see that they had no clue. And some of the stuff I knew, a lot of the stuff I did not know. But at the same time, I was thinking, you're Colombian. How do you guys know nothing? And the reason I was invited to the class, 1 was because the professor knew that I was very interested in Afro-Colombian culture, and 2, he wanted to see what kind of questions I would have because the questions that the Colombian students were asking were very surface level. And based on what he told us about his personal life, he's from a town where pretty much everyone is Black. Very small town. And where I live in Colombia, it's a pretty white town. And so for me, I was like, ooh, what culture shock did you go through when you moved here? How was the transition to being at a university? Did a lot of people in your family go to college? So were you like a first generation college student? How did that affect you? But based on the conversation that was happening with the Colombian students, I didn't want to put him on the spot. I didn't want to ask him those questions because I'm like, this room is not ready for those questions. I could go there with him, but y'all don't even know the 4 different ways that Afro-descendants identify as in Colombia, and you're Colombian. So I wanted to open up with that because it shows even at the college level, students that are in college, they don't know something as basic as that. The reason I wanted to make this video is because I listened to a podcast last week or a couple weeks ago called Vení Te Leo, and the episode was called Reescribir lo Universal with Kevin Soto and Paulo Moreno. And in the episode, they pretty much were talking about what is the Colombian literary universe, who's included, who's not, what do we need to do to change it? And so pretty much they're just saying Afro-Colombians are stuck in a box full of stereotypes. Sometimes when you get a character, it's like, here you go. So you can say we had a diverse group of characters, and they're just giving you a token Black person. So as the podcast went on, there was a point where Paulo Moreno, I realize I never said this, and it is important to mention, Paula Moreno, who was on this podcast, she was the first Black woman in Colombia to hold a cabinet position. So how we have like the US the presidential cabinet, the equivalent of that, she was the first Black woman. And this happened around the time we were getting Obama as the first Black president. And the pressure came from Black Congress members in the US saying like, y'all got a large population of Afro descendants over here. You need to have someone in the cabinet. The push didn't even come from Colombia, y'all. The push came from the US. So I did want to mention that just to give you just another example of where they are on their journey to trying to get equality and better representation. So Paula Moreno says, I'm tired of talking about inclusion. And people even say to me, like, why are you always talking about inclusion? And she said, I don't want to talk about it anymore, but it's clear that we do not have representation anywhere. Like, we don't have people in positions of power to make sure that we are represented well. And one of the things that I realized once I got to Colombia was that there is no representation. When I was in the US, I already knew I was coming to Colombia, so I was trying to find things, and I thought, maybe I just can't find them because I'm not in the country. I don't know what to look for. When I got here, I was talking to my friend, and I said, like, what shows do y'all have that have like a full Afro-Colombian cast, movies, etc.? And she's like, Zoe, there's nothing. We don't have that. And so being Black from the US, you look at how we have evolved. So we went from an era of having like the Jeffersons and Good Times, and then you move on and we get to the Cosby Show. You keep going and we have like Living Single, Fresh Prince, and then we get to like Moesha, That's So Raven, until finally now we're at the point where we can have shows like Atlanta and Insecure. So the audio quality is going to change from this point on in the video. I'm very sorry. My microphone went out. The last thing that I said is that in Colombia, they still have not even had the Jeffersons or Good Times yet. And so in my mind, I'm expecting them to at least be at like Moesha, but you're still stuck over here and pushing for them to not show you as maids or just thugs. And I even thought about how us with like Tyler Perry in the US, when Tyler Perry first came out, everybody was going to the movie theaters. We were all supporting him. Like, you always went to a Tyler Perry movie. Now in his career and how our cinema and media has evolved, we can critique him heavily. We can have discussions about like, should Tyler Perry still be putting out movies like this? Should he just produce and have someone else write? But we can demand more, or even just have that conversation, because we have evolved. They don't even have a director that's putting out a movie like targeting a Black audience every couple of years. They don't have that at all. And so it made me reflect more on my experience of being Black here. So, and this is why I want to say it's important that they have inclusion. Where I live in Manizales, there's not a lot of Afro descendants. So when people see me, they automatically assume I'm Colombian. So they start talking to me and they ask like, are you from Choco? I'm like, no, I'm not from Choco. And at first it didn't really like spark anything in me, but I realized people kept asking me, are you from Choco? So Choco is a state in Colombia, and it's pretty much a Black state. Like, mainly Afro descendants live in Choco. So when people see me, when they're asking me that, they're like, oh, there's no way you're from Manizales because you're Black and you're Colombian, so you got to be from Choco. We wouldn't do it in the US. The closest thing we do in the US is based on accent, like, oh, you got to be from New York City, you got to be from Cali. No one would look at you and be like, oh, you're from Atlanta because you're Black. We don't do that. So for me, it was like a real culture shock and like a microaggression. Like, dang, I can't be from Manizales. Like, I could be from Manizales. Why can't I be from Manizales just because I'm Black? And so looking at the media, I'm like, yeah, in the media, you're not represented all around the country. They are all around the country. Afro descendants are all around Colombia. But because they're not included in the media, this pushes these stereotypes. This pushes this narrative of, oh, Black people are just in Choco and Cali, and that's it. They're not anywhere else. So point number 2 was, there's a part in the podcast where Kevin Soto said, yes, we do have Afro-Colombian authors. There are people putting out works, but is it reaching the general public? Like some of these, it could be because of the format they're in. Maybe it's not the best quality book, like the physical version, or just a lack of promotion. It's just circulating through the same 120 people and it's not reaching more people. And so that made me reflect, because I do have my little collection of Afro-Colombian books, but I'm constantly like, oh, they mentioned a book in this, let me go and find it. Oh, something popped up on Instagram, let me try to go and find this book. It is really hard to find books written by Afro-Colombians. I know they exist, but it's hard to find them. And some of them are even available on Amazon for us to buy in the US, but they're not going to come up for you. You have to look for it. You have to type it in. So when he said that, of it just remaining in this community, it made me think of something that happened to me at university. So again, with my courses, I was taking courses for foreigners, advanced Spanish, like C1, C2 level. And my class was just 101. So I had a variety of professors, like 5. And for the most part, because I am very vocal, they knew my interests and they knew I like to read books by Afro-Colombians. So there was a day that one of my professors asked me, she said, Zoe, one of my students wants to know if you know any authors that have written about San Basilio de Palenque. So if you don't know, San Basilio de Palenque is like the first free town in Colombia. It was created by people who were previously enslaved. They ran away and they created this community, first free city. So she asked me, but this is a professor asking me, her student, about authors that have written about something in Colombia. Pretty much asking her Black gringa student about Afro-Colombian authors. And so for me, I was like, why didn't you do your own investigation? Why didn't you ask a colleague? Why are you asking me? When this is your culture, it's not mine. Why are you asking me? Even if you know I have an interest, why are you asking me for another student? And so it showed me, like, even somebody who has studied a master's, she's a professor, she works at a university, she has these resources. She didn't even have a book ready to give to her student. She had to come and ask her Black friend. And this was even worse than let me go ask my Black friend. It was let me go ask my Black student from another country about resources in my own country. Didn't make any sense. But it showed the lack of diversity, maybe I could say the lack of diversity within academia. And it also showed just the lack of visibility. Like, girl, what are you on that you don't even have one, just one? And of course I had resources, and what happened, I'm gonna just tell this part because it did make it worse for me. I knew that 2 books I read, they mentioned that town, and I knew one of the books, it would have in the back with the references, books specifically about the town. And because she asked me, because I knew the student, I was thinking maybe she needs this for her master's, maybe it's something related to her internship, so the girl might really need this, so let me go look. I looked, gave her the information. She messaged me back and pretty much was just like, oh yeah, thank you, she needed it because she went there, she visited the town, and she just wanted to know more. Again, why are y'all asking me? Why are y'all asking me? And it got on my nerves because the student had an advanced level of Spanish as well as she's doing a master's. And it's like, you were in the town, why didn't you just ask the people there? Why did you come back and ask your professor? Just ask the people there. Do your own research. Why are you going to the Black person? who's not even Colombian to give you the information. And so I just had to like share that story because I never talked about it, but it made me feel so bad because I'm just like, how do y'all not know about your own authors? You know these white people from the US, but you don't know the authors within your country. The third thing that was mentioned in the podcast that I wanted to touch on was that they mentioned book fairs that happen in Colombia that don't really highlight up and coming Afro-Colombian authors, or they don't have publishing companies there that offer those type of diverse books. And so for me, y'all, I love to read. I didn't say this yet, but I love to read. So I have been to about 3 or 4 different book fairs since I've been here. One I specifically went to in the capital in Bogota because I thought a specific company was going to be there, and they mentioned them in the podcast as Kutsoma. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. And so I went because I just knew they were going to be there. It's hard for me to order books here just because I don't have a Colombian bank account. And so I was like, it's just easier if I'm there. I can get all the books I want from them because they specifically highlight books from unpublished books written by Afro-Colombians. And they're in a couple other countries, but they're always pushing books by Afro-descendants. I messaged them. They weren't there. They were like, no, sorry, we're not there this year. It's just like, they should be there. I don't know what happened, but that it's like the actual fair themselves should make sure that there is representation like that there. And they should have panels of Afro-Colombian authors, Afro-descendants, I don't know, Afro-Latino-Americanos. Like, they don't push that. And time again, when I look at lists, sometimes it's like books translated from the US, so they're reading The Color Purple when we don't need The Color Purple in Spanish. Like, I don't need you to highlight that because you're not going to understand. I need you to highlight something from your own country written by an Afro-descendant. And then sometimes I'll have books from Spain. So I did go to a panel where they had a woman who was she's an Afro-descendant from Spain, and then they had someone who was Romani, and then another person who was an immigrant in Spain. So they tried to have some diversity with that panel. They tried to do a little something. But again, we were in Colombia at the main book fair of the year, and you didn't have a panel of Afro-Colombian authors. So the reason I really wanted to make this video was to let you know I have a substack with a list of the books that I have been able to find. Some of them I have read, some of them I have not, but I think it's extremely important that we start creating these lists, because when I look, it's hard. Or when I look, I'm looking for books written by Afro-descendants in Spanish. What's going to come up? The Color Purple in Spanish. Books by Toni Morrison in Spanish. Like that, no. We want to hear the voices of Latino-Americanos, Afro-Latin Americans. And so that's why I have the list. I really wanted to do it for Black History Month. And I just know it's so important that we see each other. Every book that I have read by an Afro-Colombian, I'm just like, wow. Like, our stories are so similar, but we're just a little bit ahead. We're a little further ahead. And we know we're in 2026. They're stripping everything away from us. But it's still like, I see the need for us to see each other and understand each other even more so than ever, because we need to support each other. We need to make sure all our voices are heard. And so there's things like that we've already gone through. We can easily say like, yeah, we did this. How can y'all do something similar, or what will work for y'all in your country? And so I have the list. It's on Substack. And then also, if you liked my commentary, I did do a shortened version of this in Spanish if you want to look at that in Spanish. But these conversations are necessary. If there's anything that you want to add in the comments, add it. If there's authors you want to add them. We need to make these lists. We need to blow up these authors because their voices matter.